Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's doing good today. We're starting our book club today. It's been like 3 weeks since we said we would do it. Um, Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, but we are back with book club. So, book club, we're doing Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, one of the greatest books of all time. This is my copy of the book that I produced. You can go ahead and get it on Amazon. If you click the link or the description and look at the link, you'll find the book link for Amazon. Finally, book club. So uh, this is some more bearded brother lore. I'm a teacher, and so I told my students a while back that if you watched the Lord of the Rings movies, that it would change your life. If you watched it with the goal of understanding it, it would just change your life because there's something so deep and profound about all sorts of things in Lord of the Rings, including honor and virtue and doing what's right even in the face of difficulty. And so I told them that this movie series would change their life, and they were like, "What?" And they were like, and to them, of course, for me, it came out when I was a kid, so it's like it feels fresh. But to them, it's like, whoa, that's so old. They didn't even have CGI. And it's like, well, they did. It wasn't very good. But so there's just a few things like that in the world. Obviously, as Christians, we feel that way about the Bible. And truly, if you read the Bible, it will change your life. But then there's some other pieces of literature as well that will change your life, not at the same level as the Bible, but also in a deep and meaningful way. Shout out to Vince. Thanks for joining us, Vince. But so Meditations is one of these books where if you read this with the goal of understanding it, it'll change your life. And so if you don't know, Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome. He was one of the last good emperors of Rome. And he had a totally different worldview than most Roman emperors of his day. He was a man who was trying to be virtuous. He was a man who was trying to do his best here on planet Earth and be a good emperor at the same time, and a philosopher. And so here we have his book. I shouldn't even call it a book because this was his private journal. And so this was never meant to be read by anybody other than Marcus Aurelius. And these were kind of his reminders to himself about how to live a good life and how to be a good person. And so I'm excited to get into this today. We're going to be covering book one. So if you have the book, hopefully you've read ahead. If not, we'll read it together here. And then I'll stop and interject a little bit. And we're going to be looking at this book from a Christian perspective. And so there's going to be times when Marcus Aurelius uh, is wrong from our worldview, but then there's going to be a lot of times where we're going through this and it seems like he's a Christian because he shares a lot of Christian virtues that we hold to. So he's a very interesting person, and he was kind of countercultural for his day. So with that being said, we're going to get started here on book one, and book one is different than all the other books. And each chapter is called a book, by the way. So don't let that confuse you. But each book serves as a chapter, right? A different set of reflections and meditations for himself. But book one is different than the rest because book one is a list of thank yous, basically. It's a reflection of his gratitude and it almost feels like prayer like, even though he's not praying to God or to any God, it almost feels like a thankfulness devotional or something like that. So we're gonna jump in here. So let's see. From my grandfather Varus, I learned good morals and the government of my temper. From the reputation and remembrance of my father, modesty and manly character. From my mother, piety, beneficence and abstinence, not only from evil deeds, but from evil thoughts, and further simplicity in my way of living, far removed from the habits of the rich. So we have to remember that Marcus grows up as kind of a noble in Roman society. And so he would have had access to all the luxuries of Rome, all the servants, all the everything of Rome. And so what he says starting off here is he learned good morals to control his temper from his grandfather. He learned modesty from his father, and he learned uh, to be far removed from the habits of the rich from his mother. And so all of this sounds nothing like a Roman from his time. And so you can already see he was very countercultural. I don't think he talks about it in this chapter, but he also learned to or one of the practices he did early on, like when he was like middle school age, he slept on the floor on the ground to train himself to not be so dependent on luxuries and stuff like that, which is very like Stoic. And so Stoic is the overall philosophy that, or the philosophical camp that Marcus Aurelius was a part of. And so this philosophy is very much about um, kind of fleeing worldly excess and also orienting yourself toward doing good for the sake of doing good. And so that's where we get some of these gravitations toward modesty and toward denial of self and stuff like that, which these things sound very Christian in nature, even though he's not a Christian. From my great grandfather, not to have frequented public schools and to have had good teachers at home, and to know that on such things a man should spend liberally. And here's just talking about the value of spending on education. And so his grandfather, this is important to remember, his grandfather, so his father died when he was very young. And so he had a lot of men in his life that he looked up to as father figures. And one of them was his grandfather, who was actually emperor of Rome. And so, in a sense, Marcus was kind of born into this royal family and kind of born for the role of emperor. From my governor, and governor, by the way, it's not talking about the governor of a state. It's talking about somebody who's in charge of a governor was somebody you hired to oversee your kids' education. And so it was someone who would walk you to and from school and kind of make sure everything's going well in that department. So from my governor, he learned to be neither of the green nor the blue party at games in the circus, nor a partisan either of the Parmularius or the excuse me, Sectarius at the gladiators' fights. From him too, I learned endurance of labor and to want little and to work with my own hands and not meddle with other people's affairs and not to be ready to listen to slander, which is another thing that sounds very Christian. I mean, imagine telling a Roman politician to not listen to or engage in slander, right? Or even a modern politician for that matter. From Diogenes, not to be busy or not to busy myself about trifling things, and not to give credit to what was said by miracle workers and jugglers about incantations and the driving away of demons and such things, and not to breed quails for fighting. I'll stop right there. So the miracle workers and jugglers and incantations away of demons. This is like um these are really like psychics and mediums and stuff like that. And so when he says to flee from those things, kind of to flee from like the pop spirituality of the day. But anyways, to not breed quails for fighting, which is kind of funny. There's some NFL players that get in trouble with Marcus Aurelius, nor to give myself up passionately to such things, and to endure freedom of speech, and to have become intimate with philosophy, and to have been a hearer first of Bacchius, then of Tandasis, then of Martianus, and to have written dialogues in my youth, and to have desired a plank bed and skin, and whatever else of the kind belongs to the Grecian discipline. And the Grecian discipline, he's talking about Stoic philosophy. And then there he mentioned it right there. So he learned from uh, Diogenes to sleep on just a plank, so a wooden board, and a little animal skin to keep warm at night. And that was something he did in his youth to discipline himself. From Rusticus, I received the impression that my character that my character required improvement and discipline. And from him, I learned not to be led astray by sophistic emulation. So it's very interesting. So this guy Rusticus um, basically called him out and said that he needed to improve his discipline and his character. And that's something also that as Christians we really believe in. You know, brothers calling each other out, right? So very very oddly humble of this Roman emperor, especially a teenage Roman emperor at this time. Um, or I should say, a pre-emperor teenager. Very, very interesting. He also learned to not be led astray to sophistic emulation, not nor to writing on speculative matters, nor to delivering little, or excuse me, nor to delivering little oratory orations, nor to showing myself off as a man who practices much discipline or does benevolent acts in order to make a display, and to abstain from rhetoric and poetry and fine writing, and not to walk about in the house in my outdoor dress, nor to do other things of the kind, and to write my letters with simplicity, like the letter which Rusticus wrote from Sinuesa to my mother. Some of these names are going to trip me up. I'm going to tell you that. I'm reading Sinuesa. I'm not sure if that's how you say it, but uh, that might be my uh, that might be my Spanish practice coming through. That sounds like a very, very Hispanic name. And with respect to those who have offended me by words or done me wrong, to be easily disposed to be pacified and reconciled, which that has like, you know, Paul written all over it right there. Like, don't don't hang on to bitterness. Don't let bitterness or don't let a bitter root grow up inside you. Like, forgive and forgive quickly as soon as they have shown a readiness to be reconciled, and to read carefully and not be satisfied with a superficial understanding of a book. Thanks for the comment, Sam. Thanks for watching. Nor hastily to give my assent to those who talk overmuch. And I am indebted to him for being acquainted with the discourses of Epictetus, which he communicated to me out of his own collection. It's kind of interesting he mentions Epictetus, because Epictetus is someone who's mentioned a lot in kind of this time in antiquity, but we have none of his writings anymore. So very interesting. So this guy that we don't know much about made a huge impact on Marcus